Let's see.
Oh, it's not live.
Oh, it is live. You'll see yourself on YouTube in just a second. I'm not concerned. If it... It's not live. Oh, it is live. You'll see yourself on YouTube in just a second.
Okay.
I'm not. So it's just not picking up that noise. So you're not going to. Are you going to use any videos today?
Well, the audience like them, so I usually do. Yes.
Oh, you can hear it. No, it's all good. It's all good. That's fine. Yes. Okay, I'll go back up and I'll connect to it.
In India, everybody wants to be a cricketer. Thankfully, I realized what was good for me and started playing chess. Make the right choice for your community.
I'm going to back up. You're good to go.
It's a creative process to create for multi-task and give you the ultimate multimedia experience. Again, the handy advantage. Can drinking water help a chess grandmaster? This is Eve. He's Australia's first chess grandmaster. And this is Christine. She's 15 years old. Welcome to the Zip experiment. In the name of science, we're going to dehydrate the grandmaster while he plays Christine in this one-man sauna to see if dehydration affects how smart you are. After just a few minutes, the Grandmaster is getting used to the 60-degree heat inside the sauna.
It's very warm. Doesn't seem to be affecting me too much at the moment.
But sooner or later, the Grandmaster is going to feel the heat. Dehydration is now affecting the planning and problem-solving parts of his brain.
Got a bit of an attack here. Maybe I'm reading material, but let's go away with that one at the moment.
So, welcome to the third day and the fourth round of the Australian Chess Championship for 2026. And we have a single leader already after 3 rounds, and that is Yi Lu from Queensland. And he has looked very impressive, especially yesterday in beating young Harvey Zhu. And he was seeded second, and he is playing the top seed in the fourth round. And this was, in fact, a decisive clash in the previous Australian Championship. Trevor Tao had started with an undefeated 5 out of 7, I think, in the championship. And Yi, with white, played really a magnificent game against him to ruin Trevor Tao's hopes. In fact, at that point, Trevor was the main challenger to Rishi Sardana. After that, there was no one to chase him, and Sardana ultimately won the tournament by 2 points. So this is a chance for revenge for Tao, but he has black. He's, certainly Yi is considered stronger with white. So anyway, it's the game we really want to see. And these two have only played that once before. On board 2, we have Lee from Melbourne against Chakrabarti from Sydney, both on 2.5 points. Lee is a student down in Melbourne, and he has been very successful in local club tournaments down there, has even travelled a little bit up to Sydney and done okay. Ranch Chakrabarti has played almost as much overseas in recent times as he has in Australia. And I should mention that he is still 11 years old. So incredibly impressive to be 7th seed in the national championship at that age. Although, as I mentioned yesterday, if the tournament had been held 4 months earlier, I think he would have been top seed. So that would have been even more ridiculous. But so certainly he's definitely one of the favourites. Okay, on board 3, Tedrick Lee, who's done a very good job. He's coming off a great performance at the Oceania Junior Championship, where he won the under-18 division and earned an international master title. He's up against the veteran Gary Lane, and from what I've already seen of that game, it's going to be the game of the round. And then on board 4, we have youth against experience. Kishig Bata Bayaskalan up against Stephen Solomon. Solomon is, I don't know how many championships he's played, but he's only won the 1. Solomon was a tournament player when he was only 10. In Melbourne, he was competing in the junior under-16 event at 10 years old. And it was in a rather tough division because in under-16 back then, you had people like Guy West, Dale Johansson, Greg Hjorth. So he kept playing the under-16 until he won it, and then he moved up to the under-18s. And eventually he won the Australian Junior Championship, and finally the Australian Championship only in 2008. After many ties for first and failed playoff matches, he finally made it. He's played 10 Olympiads for Australia. He's won 7 Australian Master titles. He's won just about everything worth winning, but he is now 62 years old, and so like Johansson, after Johansson hit 60, his results deteriorated noticeably. He was able to keep a really decent level in his 50s, as you see a number of players doing now, such as internationally, such as Anand and Gelfand. But that generation, if you could almost call it the late 80s generation, starting to drop down the rating list. You look at Ivanchuk's recent results, for example, are not so great. So these are the group that came up. A lot of them played in the 1988 Australia World Junior Championship in Adelaide. and which was unexpectedly won by Joel Lautier, but ahead of Ivan Chooks and Gelfand and all sorts of people that would become even more famous. Although Lautier still is one of the very few players who's played Garry Kasparov multiple times and maintained a plus score against him. So Lautier certainly got that to his credit. Okay, Bias Garland, Kishik Bhatta has just done everything in New South Wales, and she also travelled to Melbourne just over a year ago for the Australian Masters Championship and beat Solomon in that event. So I think that's the only time they've had to play, since Solomon is, well, largely Melbourne-based. He was from Queensland for a long time, but he had to come back to Melbourne where his parents were living, and so he's still down there. And you would back Bias Garland, to win this again, but it's hard to say. On board 5, you've got 2 Sydney players who have played around Sydney for quite a few years, and yet I believe have hardly played each other. The game I remember was 2023, when Odenthal really was controlling most of the game and swapped off to a pawn ending that he thought was good, and it turned out it was, well, it should have been drawn. It turned out that the line he played lost, and Harvey Zhu won the game. So that's not atypical. Zhu's becoming famous for his swindling efforts, but Odenthal is certainly, well, much more experienced. I think he's in his early 20s. Harvey Zhu is, I think he's turned 13 now. But so, okay, so those, well, that's a tough one to pick because the 13-year-old is in fact the higher seed. But Odenthal has got the experience and he may well be able to keep Zhu under control. On board 6, one of the big surprise packets of the tournament, John Papantoniou, really not that active over the past decade after being a strong junior. He's 31 now, I think, up against the 3rd seed, George C. And he drew last night with Daryl Johansson. Daryl Johansson was 2 pawns up in a rook ending for more or less the whole endgame, and yet he didn't win it. And there was never a really clear win, which was quite remarkable. Papantoniou defended extremely well. George C has not been overly impressive here, but I'd still expect him to bounce back, remembering we're only 3 rounds into an 11-round tournament, so a win or two can change you from midfield to moving much higher. Sukai G, the 4th seed, is up against Ryder Tesla, and these are the only 2 players, well, the only pairing in this round where we've got 2 players who've played each other a lot, and surprisingly, Testelen has the upper hand. When Sukai G has been white, Testelen has won or scored 2.5 out of 3, and only when Testelen is white has Sukai G broken even over 3 games. So those games have played. They played regularly, partly because they both play at Box Hill Chess Club, one of the big chess clubs in Melbourne, and also at Melbourne Chess Club, the other large chess club in Melbourne. So they've crossed paths a lot, but never in a tournament as important as this. So we'll see how this one goes. Testelen also coming off a very good result at the Oceania Junior Championships, tying for 1st in the under-20 division and also earning an international master title. On board 8, Jean Rusakov, one of the unsung New South Wales juniors. At the moment, there are so many good ones that just to be a good junior is not enough. And he's up against Daryl Johansson. I think that'll be a very tricky pairing for the veteran, who had a very frustrating day yesterday. And, well, we'll see if he's recovered. He looked really good in round 1, but after that, he's, well, two rounds a day is certainly Johansson's nemesis, and he may be just happier now that it's back to 1 round a day. So also on 1.5, David Cannon, the IM from Melbourne, who would have expected more. Terence Tang, the Uni of New South Wales student who took a year off, I think, to play a bit of chess and has improved quite a lot. Zhang Jilin, coming off a pretty terrible start, is back up on 50%. The woman grandmaster is running into Sterling Baaka, who also had a dreadful start. He was the one really big upset in the first round, and we'll see how they go in the battle of the out of form players. So have we got any more on 1.5? I don't think so, but I'll check. No. And then one board down from Zheng Jilin is her son, Daniel Wang, and he's playing our Olympic captain, Jack Rogers, who's looked reasonable in this tournament. So we'll see how he goes. Anything else further down of interest? No, we've just got quite a few players who would have been a bit disappointed. The real tragedy of the tournament is on bottom board. Alex Min from Adelaide, South Australian champion, could easily have 2.5 points if he'd taken his chances. Well, no, he'd definitely have 2 points if he'd taken his chances. Yeah, he had a really, really tough time. And after a 100-move game yesterday morning, really wasn't in great shape to play another 80-move game in the evening. So he's up against St George's Ted Power, who's got nothing much to lose, the 15-year-old. So we'll see how that goes. But Min Ren has to start fighting back, or else his chances of doing well in the tournament are almost gone already. And yet he's played really well. So let's go to the games. And the game I really, maybe here, the game I really want to look at, so I'll leave this up as much as I can, is the board 3 game between Kedrick Lee and Gary Lane. So it starts out as a King's Indian defence. All very normal. So absolutely straight up and down main line. But here, Kedrick Lee plays d5, which is a move that I did try for a while, but I no longer think it's that great. Lane replies with the main, or one of the main lines, a5. It's simply better for the knight to go to c5 via a6, because you don't actually have to go to c5. So bishop g5 played, and now you need to kick that bishop immediately. If you don't, then white will play knight d2 and bring the bishop back to e3 when needed, and there won't be a knight g4 to hassle it. And after that, white doesn't even need to castle kingside, just gets going on the queen side, and it could be quite considerably better for white. So h6 first, you can't go back here because of knight g4 followed by f5. So you drop back here, and only now knight a6. So all seems very normal. And of course, if queen c2, we have that option of jumping in on b4. c2 is a very normal square, but here it's not so great. So castle's played. Knight c5. And now white should almost certainly play queen c2 here. It's just a good move, but instead he played knight d2, which is very natural and normal in these lines. Nothing unusual about it until, oh no, sorry, that's fine. What did black play here? Hang on. What did he play? Doesn't seem to want to go there, unless I'm missing something. I am. Yeah, he just played the quiet bishop d7. And here white has well, not really a problem, but he would like to play a3 and b4 and get rid of that knight. But if he plays a3, black will play a4 and freeze the queen side completely. So instead of something useful like queen c2 or I will have many possible moves, he goes b3. Because after b3, if you go a4, we go b4. So we can go a3 and then b4. And even then, after a3, it's possible for black to go a4, jump the knight in on... Oh, no, we can't jump in on b3 here because you've got the knight on d2 already. So, yeah, so next is a3, next is b4. And here, absolutely out of the blue, Gary Lane gives away his queen. Knight takes pawn. Bishop takes. Knight takes. Now, if Tedrick Lee was scared here, he didn't show it. If he was scared, he probably would have played bishop takes pawn here, given back the queen, and tried to pick up that pawn on d6 as well. Although I think black has rook a6. Maybe not. Maybe there's a c5 move. So it is possible to take this pawn. And after knight takes, rook takes, it feels as if black should be better, but it's not so easy to play. But Tedrick Lee wants to be shown. He moves his queen. He has to keep the bishop protected. And now he takes back with which rook? Queen's rook. Okay. Very sensible, keeping that other rook for backing up an f5 advance. So I'd be interested to see what the clock times were. Well, Tedrick Lee has used very little time, even up on move 20. So my guess is he knew about this queen sacrifice. I wouldn't ever recommend white playing it because it seems a lot easier to play with black than with white, because with black you just go f5, e4, open up for that unopposed dark squared bishop, and the two pieces for the queen look really, really imposing. But knight b1 is not a bad try, actually. So he now took, queen took, played e4 to win some material back, and then came knight a3. And black's bishop on g7 is so good that there's something to be said for not even taking the rook, saying that that bishop is better than the rook, and just playing f5 and so on. But Lane, well, they both seem to know what they were doing. Takes. So my guess is there is a game that's already been played with this or something very, very similar. So he took the rook, then he played f5, I suppose. Oh, that's on the wrong game. Hang on. Let's see. Oh, yes, he played... hang on, he didn't take the rook immediately. There you go. He took it later. So he started with f5, I think. Yep. White played f4. Gee, it looks like black could just sit tight here and be doing quite well. Instead, he took here, which I'm not totally sure about. Took back with the pawn. Hang on, yep. Then he took the rook. And I presume black's going to go to the e file now. No, he just goes b6. Oh, otherwise queen d2 threatens that one and that one. So definitely worth avoiding, and he went queen d2 anyway. So let's assess what black has for the queen. Black has a rook, a bishop, and a pawn. So if you add them up, you would normally come to about 9.5. and queen is worth about 9 3/4, so nominal advantage for white. Both kings have the potential to be exposed a little bit, but right now the black pieces don't really have entry squares, nor does the rook. So the longer it goes on, usually the better the queen turns out to be. But white still has an offside knight. It probably needs to go to d4. The bishop will keep it under control, but it's still a very good piece. And white may need to exchange one pair of rooks so that the white king can keep the rook out, and then the queen can go wandering. Still, it doesn't look easy at all for white to make progress. So queen d2 played. Lichess is suggesting g5 here. Even a move like f4 could be interesting. That would free the bishop to come to f5 sometime. And maybe a rook e8, rook e3 idea might work too. But certainly I don't have a problem with g5. And Gary Lane is the first to really think in this game. So, yeah, it has, well, the computer, I have not an up-to-date computer assessment, but the computer is thinking it's roughly equal, and it certainly has settled down. I mean, that's one of the problems. You can play this creative queen sacrifice idea, but if someone's played it before you and your opponent knows about it, then they've got a chance to neutralize it. And 15-year-old Tedrick Lee, given his clock time, just 6 minutes used so far, plus increment, knows what he's doing. That's move 21. The only danger for white is if he keeps playing a bit too fast. But so far, Lane will be a bit disappointed with the way things have gone. Notice these two are rated almost identically too. So now we have the top two seeds playing each other. And Yi, with great memories of the previous encounter in the Australian Championship 2 years ago, where he inflicted Trevor Towers' first loss. So we have a Queen's Indian defense. So bishop f4 played, and now bishop check, knight fd2. If you think this looks weird, well, it is a bit, but it's actually part of a system developed by the English player Tony Miles many years ago. Most of his opponents didn't check here, and there were other versions of this. I think actually you don't have to go knight fd2, but after bishop here, e3 check, you probably should go knight fd2. But he decided to do it anyway, since he's expecting bishop b7. He didn't get bishop b7. He must have. Oh, the bishop is already on b7, sorry. So yeah, in this position, knight fd2 is necessary. Your problem is if you play knight bd2, you can run into all sorts of knight here ideas and g5, g4 or something like that. Probably, is it working here? I'm not so sure. Wait, knight bd2 might be working, but I don't want to play knight c3 and get an Imzo Indian where my bishop's on the slightly silly square f4. But knight fd2 is more ambitious. You're going to knock that bishop away. You might play f3 and e4 later. So castles, a3, takes. So Yi's picked up a pair of bishops. I wouldn't say that matters too much to Tao, who does like his knights. So d6. And Tao's just setting up one of these super stodgy positions. He'll either go c5 or e5. And white might get a big pawn center, but it could easily get a blocked position where the two bishops aren't so good. One thing about the blocked position is generally black's king would prefer to be still in the center if the center is going to become blocked. So having castled early makes it a little bit easier for white to play. So bishop here. Okay, knight c6 is not what I expected. We couldn't take here. Probably not. Rook here, bishop h6, something like that. Looks pretty good. So he just goes knight c6. And I guess we castle. And don't worry about, hang on. Bishop e2, knight c6. Yep, castles. Should we? I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous about e5. Because normally on e5, I'd want to leave it alone with bishop here or bishop here. So should I be throwing bishop f3 in or something like that? So because after he castles, e5 is played. You have to take, and instead of taking with the pawn, we just take with the knight. And all black's pieces are looking good. It's the sort of pawn structure you get from something like a Budapest gambit. And although in theory, white can go b4 and c5, usually that's not possible. There will be a knight coming back to d7. And even if you go f3 and e4, it's not so great. Now, one day, maybe knight f1, knight e3, knight f5, but it's a long, long way off. So, h3 played. He wants a hiding hole, but that's a bit, well, I guess he couldn't think of anything better. Queen e7, queen c2. So Yi, having a position he doesn't know that much about, decides to just play sensible developing moves. Okay, knight here, bishop back. Now knight e4 is possible if you want. Does he want to do it? He does. Knight takes. And now he doesn't take with the queen. If he took with the queen on e4, you'd have to swap. And actually that knight on g6 is not that well placed in this ending, because white can very quickly go b4 and c5. That knight wants to be on d7 to prevent that. So he stays in the middle game with bishop takes. Queen moves somewhere. Gee, they're rattling along though. Queen c3, f5. Yeah, this is the sort of plan that you see often in the Budapest, in a knight bd2 line of the Budapest gambit. And it's usually not very effective. Even if you get f4 in, normally, at best, you're going to equalize. So f3 first. I would have considered rook e1 first as being a little bit safer, keeping my own bishop mobile. Rook here. So right now, f4 probably is answered by, I don't know, f4 might be possible, but he doesn't play it. He plays a5. Makes sense. Because if white plays b4 here, unless you can get c5 fast, you'll constantly be worrying about takes, and maybe decoying your queen away from where it needs to be. I wonder if f4 is going to be answered by bishop here. It looks like it might leave the king a little bit loose. So queen d4 played. a4. Well, queen d4 does stop black from playing f4. But once black has got this move in, I would regard his position as near indestructible. First of all, e4 might happen one day, but it's not going to kill black at all. And secondly, you can never get c5 in now. In fact, we can play rook here, and possibly even put pressure on that, because that bishop on g3 is not really influential at all. So if there is no c5, then white's position is pretty static. There is one plan for white involving g4 and taking back with the H pawn that would work in an endgame, but right now with all these pieces pointed at your king, it's not really a viable plan. So I'd say Trevor Tao would be pretty happy with the way things have gone. So H4 played. That would normally get my what a load of rubbish comment, because the knight can always sit on E5. Because once you've played H4, if it sits on E5, you're going to have to swap it off, because you play F4, there's all sorts of weak light squares around. In fact, probably I want to go from E5 to D7 to C5, and then black will simply be better. So I get the feeling that the second seed is really not understanding this position so well. So yeah, I wouldn't play E5, knight E5 here with black, purely for the psychological reason that I'm almost sure white's going to play H5 and force me to do it anyway. So I want to use the spare move to do something else. Rook A5, Rook E8, and then after H5 I'll go here, because I'm not scared of H6. He's probably thinking, though, if I play knight E5, then if H5 I can go H6 and nothing's wrong. So right now, if you don't take that knight, then that knight will reappear on C5 and you will have big problems. If you do take the knight, then after pawn takes, you have problems with the pawn on H4. Now, you're not losing a pawn because of Queen C3, but if you have to play G3 to defend it later, then you really have a problem, because your king is starting to get very, very loose. So it may be that bishop takes is the best move, because I'd hate to see that knight turn up there. Otherwise, can white push in the center? I don't think so. So what are the clock times like? Yeah, well, Trevor Tao has only used 15 minutes, and he's got a great position. So, okay, so that's our board 1 and our board 2, which is Lee against Chakrabarti, and that is a not your common or garden Catalan opening, I must admit. So we start out with exactly the same opening as board 1, except on move 3, instead of playing B6, Chakrabarti goes for a normal Queen's Gambit. So G3 played, castle, oh sorry, no, you can't castle, bishop B7. Yep. Bishop G2, castles. Queen C2, pawn takes. And now white's next move is pretty awful, actually. There is a line where after queen takes, when black goes A6, you go A4. That's fine. But there is also a line where after white goes A4, black goes A5 and knight A6. So right now, we can gain a tempo if we're black by playing into a normal line with A5 and knight A6, and then dumping it on the weak square B4, or starting with knight C6 and then playing A5. So they're both completely possible. But instead, Chakrabarti plays C5, which of course is not a bad move, but you do have to be careful, because a lot of these endings, if the queens come off the board, so for example, takes, queen C7, queen takes, can work out quite well for white because of the pressure that the bishop on G2 puts on the pawn on B7. And it's just a little bit tricky to develop the bishop on C8, because B6 usually weakens that diagonal too much. So C5, pawn takes. And now black is having a think. it's almost as if he's got too much choice. He's got knight a6, he's got bishop c5, he's got queen a5 check, queen c7, of course. And even something quiet like knight c6, answering queen takes pawn with knight a5, and trying to get into the weak b3 square before white gets developed. So I'm not surprised that Chakrabarty's having a bit of a think, but honestly, I think he should have done that thinking before he played c5, because pawn takes is the most obvious move on the board. You should have your reply ready, or at least while your opponent was thinking about taking, you should be ready with what you're going to do next. Because, yeah, if you don't know what to do against pawn takes pawn after c5, then a c5 is being played almost on spec, which is not that healthy. So, okay, the time that black is using on recapturing this pawn is going to be 10 times more useful on move 30, when the position is nothing like the position now. And he would, you often beg for an extra 5 minutes near the time control, let alone the 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So I'll just go back to see how long he's been thinking. That's hard to believe. Maybe the clock's a little bit wrong, but it's still not encouraging that he's dropped down from 114 to something much lower. We'll drop in quickly on the Queen's Sacrifice game with Gary Lane. And he did, in fact, play f4, as I suspected, and now rook here. Now, the one annoying thing from black's point of view is normally you want to answer rook e1 with rook e8, but here we can take, and f4 is hanging. That might be why the computer was preferring g5 as opposed to playing f4 immediately. So I don't think rook e7 is it's an annoying move, actually. Rook e7 is not bad. So yeah, it could be black should just quietly play rook f7 here. But then that white knight will start repositioning. Knight c2, knight d4. And it's not that easy for black's pieces to reposition. So you feel as if white's doing okay. And the clock times also indicate that white's doing okay. Tedrick Lee's just playing natural moves. He knew the theory up until a few moves ago. His opponent is burning time. And I suspect he's worrying about things he shouldn't be worrying about. Of course, he's down a tiny bit in material, but otherwise his position's absolutely fine. Maybe he should just go g5 now. Answer rook e7 with rook f7. Answer knight f2 with rook e8. It still looks absolutely fine. So is the computer saying, it'll say plus 0.6 or 7, I guess. Yep, what a guess. So yeah, nothing too serious. It wants bishop h3 to try and set up some sort of mating attack, but I'm not so sure about that. Okay, let's move on to Bias Garland, who has had the wood over Stephen Solomon, beating him twice, once in Toowoomba last year, once in the Australian, not last year, in 2024, and once in the Australian Masters in 2024. So we have another game with the same opening. That is quite remarkable. And again, nobody wants to play against a Nimzo Indian with knight c when they play knight c3. So knight f3. This time, a third alternative, the Bogo Indian defense. Bishop check. Now, Solomon has sat beside Darryl Johansson at many, many chess Olympiads when he played the Bogo with great success, so he should know something about it. Knight d2, not a great square for the knight. So now after d5, if you knock the bishop, we can happily go back to e7. We've lost a tempo, but you've put your knight on a silly square. So g3 played instead. Castles, bishop g2. It is possible to grab on c4, but I really wouldn't recommend it. And the other move I really wouldn't recommend is c5. I don't know who played it first, Chakrabarty or Solomon. So takes, and now not knight a6, but knight d7. So looks like he's very happy to take an isolated pawn. Castles, knight takes, and takes here. Yeah, so if you take back with the knight, we might just play knight c4 with the idea of going a3 and b4 and winning a piece. And that could be a bit annoying. So instead, to restrict the moves of that knight, just pawn takes. And apart from the weird bishop on b4, this is a perfectly decent isolated queen pawn position for black. A3, just to pick up the pair of bishops, makes sense. Bishop takes, probably bishop takes, and bishop f5. Rook here. Everyone's playing normal moves. And where do we want the bishop to go? Could go anywhere. Oh, he went knight e6. He didn't go knight e4. Perhaps bishop e3, bishop d4 would have been annoying. Even at knight g4, bishop d4. So black actually played knight e6, getting a little bit of extra control over the d4 square. So that pawn might advance. And now, instead of a normal positional battle that you might get if white played bishop c3 and tried to dump it on d4, just looks like a very normal game. Instead, Biascalan went for queen b3. Okay, it looks a little bit annoying. Okay, we cannot go the natural queen e7 because of bishop b4. That is a pest. I don't know if we want to go queen b6, but Solomon decided he didn't really want to do that or play b6. Yeah, queen b6 is probably okay, but we can take in bishop e3. It could be a little bit annoying. So instead, Solomon gave away that b pawn, and Biascalan took it. So it seems as if after rook here, she'll take this one, rook takes, and then maybe bishop b4 gaining a tempo so that that pawn can't be taken so quickly. But once again, it's Solomon having a big think after the obvious move, after queen takes b7. Again, maybe black's got more than one option here, but rook b8 just looks like the right way. So yeah, a little bit strange that he's having a think now. Maybe he thought he could bluff Biascalan out of taking on b7 by some, I don't know, d4 trick, which is a reasonable move, but the queen just comes back. d3 doesn't look quite good enough. Well, maybe d4. Let's have a look. d4, queen b3, rook b8 now. Okay, this could be a little bit of a pest. I don't really want to go here because I feel as if bishop here and perhaps bishop b3, perhaps rook b3, probably bishop b3, could tie white up quite a lot. So that looks like reasonable compensation for the pawn. So what else can we do after d4? Well, I think sitting on a6 makes a bit more sense. Staying off the b file and also being able to play bishop b4 later. And sure, there is this d3 move, but I'm not really, actually, I don't know if I'm scared about it or not. Now I can go bishop a5. I can go rook fd1. I suspect Solomon wants to find some tricks involving knight d4. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. This is at least a little bit scary. So yeah, I reckon d4 is the way to go. But how long did Bias-Galen spend on queen takes b7? Or more to the point, on queen b3? So queen b3 took no time at all. And only 10 minutes on queen takes b7. Well, she must have a method against d4. We just don't know what it is. Remembering that Bias-Galen has a 2-0 score against Solomon. So maybe she's getting a little overconfident, the 18-year-old from Mongolia. Okay, back to our top board. Anything happen? Not really. h5, h6, rook c1, and Trevor Tao is simply taking over. I played enough Budapest Gambits to know that this is not a lot of fun. Yeah, rook ac1 is almost irrelevant. Knight d7, because you're going to get forked on b3 whether your rook's on c1 or a1. And there is simply no c5 ideas at all at the moment. And I would also say that that pawn could get super weak with a queen e8 or a queen f7 at exactly the moment when white isn't looking. So first job, though, is to play knight c5, make sure white never plays e4 or almost never plays e4. Now, perhaps bishop d3, knight c5, bishop c2 makes sense to cover that knight where it reappears. But of course, once your bishop's here, it gets a little bit harder to guard that. And of course, we always have this rook a5 move. But, oh no, not with the knight on c5. Don't need to. So I'll probably put a rook on e8. Yeah, it's not game over by any means. It's just a lot more fun for black to play. Really a lot more fun. As shown by the move king f2. Yeah, king f2 is one of these moves I don't think I would play at all. He wants to be able to guard this pawn. But after knight c5, I just feel as if there's going to be a knight e4 check or a knight d3 check just when you're not looking. And yeah, you've walked into exactly where the knight c5 played immediately, because that's suddenly creating some ideas that white has to be careful about. Of course, there is knight b3, which is also going to be super annoying. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are some positions where knight e4, well, even bishop d3, knight e4 might be actually quite good. I'm not sure about that, but it does look fairly promising. So yeah, don't play bishop d3. Well, bishop d3 is stupid anyway because it allows knight b3. So the top board, Trevor Tao, looks like he's on the path to toppling the leader. On the other hand, after serious thinking by Rayanch Chakrabarti, the youngster from Sydney played queen a5 check. And the thing I like about this move, apart from it being a sensible move, is that it gives white a huge choice. And there's always a tendency when a player has spent 20 minutes on a move, the opponent usually replies by spending quite a lot of time on the next move, because they assume that they've come up with some super deep idea and they want to find out what it is. It can be really a great way of luring a player into time trouble, already in time trouble, into thinking more than they would normally. If you go bang, 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 they're going to reply with bang, bang, bang. But if they've only got, say, 3 minutes left and you spend 20 minutes on something very subtle, they're going to spend some of their time trying to work out what the point is. And here, I would be surprised if Lee didn't spend a fair bit of time, at least 5 minutes, maybe more, deciding whether to play bishop here, knight here. I don't think I want to play knight c3, or even knight fd2 is tricky. But I just want to play this. I wonder if the idea is c3 then. Could be. And then after takes, you can take this, and maybe you've got a better pawn structure, although generally white's development advantage outweighs that. So queen a5, yeah, an annoying move, but I'm sure white is doing fine, but he has to choose from a lot of options. And his opponent's just spent 20 minutes, so he's going to show respect. Usually people show respect by spending quite a bit of time on their next move. So Solomon did not play d4 here. He played the line we dismissed as not so great. Queen takes. And is he going to take on b2? He hasn't decided yet. But unless he's got something super tricky, that queen will easily get back. So is d4 super tricky? That threatens rook a8 winning the queen. I reckon something simple like bishop here might do the job. If rook a8, I've got the e7 square for my queen. I still could get trapped in there, but it's not that likely. So, yeah, I suspect that Solomon is going to pull his head in and grab that pawn, but his opponent has an extra pawn now. So we'll see how we go on that one. And yeah, the queen sacrifice game, for those of you who have only just come in, we got a normal King's Indian, and after b3, the game went a bit crazy with knight takes pawn. Bishop takes queen, knight takes knight. So we've got two pieces for the queen and a pawn. And here, Tedrick Lee, who had clearly prepared this line, he's already, yeah, I mean, he's been faced with a queen sacrifice and he's got 4 minutes more than when he started on his clock. So he knows this line, and he played knight b1 thinking for 13 seconds. So he's quite prepared to give back the exchange, and this position he reckons is better for white. That's probably true, but you still have to play well. Rook e8. So if rook takes rook, is he going to take back with the bishop? I'd be a bit surprised, but I guess it's possible. So instead, he just improves his knight. Knight c2. g5, we were waiting for that. 94. Take, probably rook e8. Queen b1. Okay, so king g7 looks completely normal. Knight f5 is interesting. King g7 was played, in fact. So Gary Lane's run himself quite short of time. Okay, so first question is, after knight f5 check, if we take, does black have a complete blockade? I really don't know. Takes. Let's say we go totally passive with rook e7. Does white have a way to make progress? Probably. h4 looks quite promising. So what's wrong with knight f5 check? Will black take and just put a rook on the 7th? That could be a bit scary. We can then follow with queen c8 if we want, and get your c pawn. I don't think black is going to have a perpetual, but you never know. I doubt it. No, there's no perpetual check here, I think. Yeah, it's a little bit scary for white, but he should go for it. This is probably where Tedrick Lee should finally start spending some time, because if knight f5 is good, which he just played, then white is doing extremely well. But okay, so here I would say, yeah, Gary Lane probably wants to play rook e2 now. Takes. Yeah, you have to take that knight because otherwise you're walking into all sorts of problems. So rook e2, queen here. I think white's just a bit too quick. I mean, if you try to take these guys, the important one we get is d6. And once we get that, that path d pawn should cause too many problems. So did he take it? He did indeed. And this is where they're up to. So it's all a bit sad for the guy who played the big queen sacrifice on move 10 to suddenly be defending a worse ending. But that can happen when you play a line that is theoretical and your opponent knows at least as much as you do. Because I think when Gary Lane prepared this, it would have been, in a worst case, I get this and I can defend it. I'm not too worried. But when you get there, you think it's a 2-result game and I really don't want to be defending this. So we haven't looked at board 5 yet. We're not having that on a demo board. And it started as, well, the first game so far that didn't go e6. And we have a proper King's Indian. Remembering that in round 1, Harvey Zhu was comprehensively outprepared in not a King's Indian, but a modern defense. And he did eventually go on to win, but nothing to do with the opening. Okay, bishop e3. This is a relatively modern line. Previously, everyone went bishop g5, and only after h6 they went back to e3. It was called the Averbach system, and Darryl Johansson, for example, was one of the main proponents of it. Nowadays, they're not bothered getting black to play h6, and here the idea is to discourage them from playing c5. Now, I think c5 is completely playable here as a pawn sacrifice. But this is quite interesting. So white often wants to go with g4 and h4, but Zhu wants to counterattack after knight a6. He doesn't even waste a tempo on a5, which we saw in the Gary Lane game. He wants to get his piece out fast because he knows g4 and h4 are coming. He wants to go knight fd7 and then f5 if white is planning on a g4 advance. So even if white gets g4 in, he wants to break things up with f5 and put the knight on d7 on c5 and see how things go from there. I believe he had a game in the Hong Kong Open last week against the Indian Grandmaster Gupta, and Gupta played a similar line to this and found himself, well, maybe not in trouble, but desperately hanging on against Harvey Zhu. Ultimately, Zhu knocked back a draw by repetition and missed something tactical, missed a couple of things tactical, and went on to lose the game. So the Grandmaster sort of almost by, yeah, he had very good psychology against a 13-year-old. He basically said to him, you've got a forced draw here if you want it. And the assumption by a junior is usually, well, if I'm equal, I can't possibly be, I'm at least equal, probably I'm better, let's keep going. And yeah, but some positions are just really, really equal. And that one, there was no real way of playing for a win. So instead of g4, I don't know if Odenthal saw the game in Hong Kong, he just goes knight f3. So here, well, my chess education was always that if your opponent lets you play knight g4 in a King's Indian, you should always do it because then you can follow up with f5 very, very quickly. Now, after knight g4, bishop g5, f6, presumably black would go bishop h4, but I would, yeah, I've always regarded that as quite promising for black, even though I'm not exactly sure how to play it, whether it's queen e8 or pulling back with knight h6 to f7 immediately. but instead he goes knight h5. Now knight h5 is good if white can't play g3, but there are so many games with g3 that has shown how white should play. And if you have a look at the clocks, both players are very much in theory. f5, knight g5. Oh, no, didn't go knight g5. Went bishop g5. Oh, okay. If knight g5 is f4 serious? Maybe it is serious. Okay, so you can't go knight g5 here. Do you have another move? Not really. Okay, bishop here, queen e8, knight h4. That's a lot of effort by white, and I'm not sure his knight on h4 is terribly well placed. If he can manage to keep things intact, he's probably going okay. I actually want to check this out because I reckon that there's a recent game in this line that I... okay, so knight h5. First of all, we'll go reference to see what people usually play. And g3 is not only the most common move, it has the best score of moves that have been played more than once. So g3, f5. So ef5 is the main move. Instead, he starts with bishop here, queen e8. And admittedly, this is a grandmaster against a not so strong player at the Yugoslav Championship many years ago. Oh, he did swap anyway, and black took over the initiative. So let's just go to what actually happened, knight h4. So first of all, has anyone ever played like this? Probably not, because probably they... Oh, okay, we're threatening to take on f5. That makes sense. So knight f6, f3. I'm just checking if this has happened by transposition, but it looks completely new. And I trust black here. I don't know if the computer does. They say take on e4 and go bishop h3. Just keep developing and stopping the knight from coming back to g2. It looks a little bit risky because after you play that line, if you put your bishop on h3, maybe g4 traps that bishop. So there'd have to be some good tactics working for black to make it work. Well, apparently there are good tactics, but instead f4 played. So still recommended, and remarkably, despite white preparing all this, the computer is saying they like black a lot. Well, if they want white to play g4, then you can be almost certain that things are going well for black, because the bishop on g5 could get stranded. For example, after h5, we're threatening knight h7, winning a whole piece. So you've got to be very careful there. So takes first, takes, knight g2. And now he doesn't go bishop h3. Again, probably because after the knight is protected, he's worried about his bishop getting trapped by g4. So instead he plays a more simple line, bishop g5. Now the first thing to note here is the h-file is not much use for white because white has only a rook on the h-file. So that's not really a worry. However, if white can succeed in going f4 at any point, then black could really get into trouble. But white can't go queenside here and doesn't really want to go to the other flank. So bishop rook b1 played. And now queen f7. Yeah, it's actually the third alternative. I'm not sure why queen e7 is good, because b4 is coming anyway. But I do know that in this sort of position, black can usually be very happy to go knight c5, encourage b4, and then go knight d7, knight f6, knight h5. Because the knight is actually not doing that much, and white has completely consolidated that pawn on e4, so the knight on c5 doesn't do much. There's other ways of trying to do it, but here c6 leaves a very weak d pawn. on d6, so I don't really want to play it. Instead, queen f7, which is rather baffling to me. That pawn is solid. You're walking into a pin if white wants to go f4. Now, probably it doesn't work, but, or does it? No, if f4, pawn takes, probably we castle kingside. Maybe bishop h3 is okay. But okay, the move white wanted to play was b4. So why wouldn't he play b4 here? Does queen f7 do anything about that at all? I don't see the point. It's all very weird. If you wanted to develop, bishop d7 was an obvious move. He's not getting to f2 anytime soon. So it is a bit on the baffling side. Why doesn't he just... Yeah, and white played b4, so why not? And now it's, yeah, black's turn to work out what to do, but this looks very messy to me. Probably. The computer initially liked black, now he's not so sure, and the move that he really likes, queen e7, is not likely to be played because he just put the queen on f7. So, yeah, it does feel as if Harvey Xu got a decent position at the opening, but he's now drifting a little bit. Anyway, let's go back to the live games. And yeah, so b4 has been played, and Harvey Xu is also down to half an hour on the clock, which is not so healthy. Further down, George C. We haven't looked at his game against John Papantonio recently, but it certainly looks like that's weird. Is that just a pawn up for white? No, we can take on a4. White's better. In these exchange variations, like an exchange Slav or something like that, often the bishop on g7 for black is really a bad piece. It just bites on nothing. And it's even worse for black to have a bishop on e6, because the main way out for that bishop on g7 is to move the rook on f8, play e6 and play bishop f8 to be relevant on the queen side, and that's certainly not possible in this line. So I would say George C. has a very serious disadvantage here. That doesn't look serious. Could he have played better? Oh, that's what happened. Okay. So they're saying queen a6, keep more pieces on the board. They say this is nothing special. But certainly for the third seed to drop a draw against John Papantonio, who's seeded 26, is not really anything special. So that's not a great position to have if you're George C. Further up, our top board, white is getting into a little bit of time trouble, not surprising because his position was pretty horrible. Things have changed a bit. Queen h4. So this is almost saying I'm confident I can hold a draw in an ending. And I'm saying that despite white having a pair of bishops, it's still a very favourable position for black. But quite understandably, with your opponent running a little bit short of time, why not keep the queens on? You've still got some good moves to play. Rook here, yeah, it's a useful move, but nothing much happening. So black is not sure he wants to put a rook on e8. So he's holding that rook on a8 for a bit longer to see really where it wants to go. Rook d1, white is doing absolutely nothing. Bishop here. Rook up, or back rather. rook here finally. Rook h1. Well, it is a genius move, but I can't explain it. He wants to move his queen. Okay. So he's protecting h5 and he wants to move his queen. Rook b8 played. King f1. But right now there are a couple of, well, undefended pieces or poorly defended pieces. It feels like there might be a tactic somewhere. So the first question for Trevor Tao is, does he want to play b5 and exchange off the light squared bishops? And the answer is not yet. So he wants either white to defend the e3 pawn and make b5 a little bit better because the b2 pawn will be hanging later, or get the king on f2, where again there's various knight check tricks that might cause problems. So he'll play king f2, I would think. Could he move the other rook to e8 and then play b5? Because f5 certainly doesn't seem like much of a weakness at the moment. So black's got all the time in the world. White is doing precisely nothing, just defending weak points, and he's running himself short of time. So there's no hurry at all for Trevor Tao. It's just the sort of position he wants. So Stephen Solomon has already lost. What on earth was going on there? So we left it after rook b8, queen takes a7, rook takes, why not? Bishop b4. We need to move that rook. Is there a problem? Is there a knight e5 or something? There is a knight e5. That's extraordinary. There is no way to defend f7. That attack came absolutely out of nowhere. Fantastic. So Solomon took on e2, but he knew what was coming. Queen takes, king here, and queen takes knight. So if you take, we'll go check, take, and we've got a whole extra piece and wins easily. So that makes it 3-0 for Biascalan, and really Solomon just, it's not the first time in this tournament that Solomon has simply miscalculated a straightforward line. So but possibly, well, rook b8 is probably not as good as d4, but even so, well, yeah, then if you can, it's true, but if you can't take on b2, you're probably lost anyway. But there was still d4 instead of taking on b2, threatening rook a8, and still would have made the game interesting. So that's it's a bit sad that the teenagers are doing that to the veterans, but I think we're going to see it happen more often as the tournament goes on. So Biascalan goes to 3 points now. Yeah, and she's 10th seed. Solomon was 16th seed. She's just 18. She has won a lot of tournaments in New South Wales over the last year and a half, and also beat Solomon a couple of times in the process, but here this was by far the easiest of the lot, and I might have to take that off a demo board if I find a suitable alternative. Okay, back to our top game. So 48-year-old Trevor Tao is out playing 28-year-old Yi Lu with the black pieces. And also, yes? So, oh, Solo's here. So you just missed 95, did you? Yeah. As you're a bit unlucky, it's a total collapse after that, but So did you, instead of taking on B2, did you consider D4?
Yeah.
And what was your conclusion? Right, okay. And what about yeah. Let's see, what do we need? Pawns, just pawns. So what was your problem with D4 here? Queen A6. Sorry, that's here at the moment, isn't it? So can we start with Queen D5 here, or is it not working? So you're saying Queen D5 is always answered by Queen C4, yeah? No, hang on, I can swap and take here. That could get a bit tricky. So Queen here. Now, I'm not sure if black has a threat here, because take on E2 you can take with the queen. But it's starting to look a little bit scary. Bishop C3. Yeah, Bishop C3, I might go Knight C5 and jump in on B3 or something. Maybe I can't. Yeah. Is this the position? No, the rook's on B2. Oh yeah, you're still alive after Queen A8. Uh-huh. Ah, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it does feel as if you might just be a pawn down though. I mean, takes 92 or something. Oh no, then you got takes 95. Little bit of pressure. You're probably going to finish up with a 4 versus 3 ending, yeah? Yeah, so, wow, so it was really only rook E8 that lost it so badly. I thought after bishop E4 you were dead, but queen A8 is not bad. Okay, so Trevor Tao still hasn't done anything, but he keeps threatening to play b5. It's probably near optimum moment to do it, you know. Is there anything else he can do that could improve his position before he plays b5? He could reposition his bishop on c6 to a6, but that pawn on c4 seems well enough protected, and I don't think I'm going to get a d5 idea. So he plays it. He's still got an hour left. His opponent's down to his last 23 minutes. So, yeah, on top board, this is looking a bit scary. I haven't gone down the list yet today, but yeah, in fact, I haven't even looked at Daryl Johansen against the Sydney junior Jean Rusakov, but this I predicted would be a tough battle for the Grandmaster. So it starts with a type of Scheveningen opening, and Rusakov, being young, plays a modern system of English attack. Just, it's easy to play. Here, Johansen doesn't bother with any of this h5 stuff, just castles and knight here. And I must admit, Johansen has a really good record with this stuff. Just playing very naturally, not worrying about the attack. Okay, if bishop takes pawn, I'm a bit concerned about queen h2. So he just develops. And now a3. Yeah, there's an old rule in the Najdorf variation that says that if white has to waste a move with a3, then black is doing very well. But very often b4 doesn't do much for black. But it doesn't always apply. Knight e5. He's actually playing an idea that he's played very, very often. Knight c6, bishop here, b4, take, take. And here he's often done extremely well by following up with queen a5 and then rook c8 and maybe take on c3 sometime. So Rusakov's next move, bishop c4, is actually very clever against Johansen because it rules out the mating attacks on a2. Now, the bishop on b3 might get hit by a pawn, but not if there's a queen on a5. So perhaps black should play queen c7 and then a5, bishop c6, something like that. But it could be that black should simply play queen d7 and rook c8 and then a5. Or oh no, that probably then bishop a4 deals with that. So yeah, it's hard to know. But Johansen's finally started thinking. Where was he here? Yeah, he hadn't used that much time up to here. Suddenly, a lot of time's gone down because his normal plan is not available. How good is that? Okay, so it's just they say queen c7, bishop b3, d5, or d5 immediately. Wow. Sacrificing a pawn just to get at the white king. I don't think he's going to play that, you know. It's more likely to play queen c8 and, well, wait for g5 and then queen c8 and d5, hitting the rook on h3. But even that's not so probable. d5 does look weird, really weird. But okay, that's the computer's plan. So Sukai G attempting to break his, well, the hoodoo that Ryder Teslin has over him. The fourth seed has a super weird position. How on earth did this happen? An English where nobody's really trying to do anything special. And he tries to stop d4, so he plays it anyway. E3 was another idea. Okay, so white should be a little bit better here. We can put a bishop on g5, but black is almost ready to play bishop e6. So if we go bishop d5, we don't quite have time to take on f6 and play knight d5. He started with knight d5 instead. take, knight here. And everything's completely crazy now. So is Testelin just losing a pawn? Well, actually, he's got another problem. It's not just that the e4 pawn is under attack. It's that there is a threat of b4 winning the knight on a5. So you've got to deal with both. And the knight is, it's not so easy to deal with that knight sitting there. If you go bishop f5, you just encourage knight d4. So I certainly don't want to do that. And I don't think a Gary Lane style sacrifice with pawn takes knight is really going to work around here. You do get a check on e1, but I don't see a follow-up. Maybe it's worth doing, but what is he going to do? They say bishop f5, knight d4, bishop g6. Don't worry about the e4 pawn. Concentrate on, if b4, you'll have bishop f6, and otherwise rook c8. Look, perhaps. But that's not a voluntary pawn sacrifice, which makes it rather hard to play. If it was your idea to give away a pawn, that's great. But he's been forced into it, which makes you more pessimistic about the success of the whole operation. Okay, let's go back to the top two boards. Have we had any action here? Yes. So these have moved a bit. Anything else? Yeah, the rook's on e8. And the bishop did not go to f4. It went here. He didn't want knight e6 happening later. And finally, b5. Oh, then rook h4. No, hang on. b5, then rook h4, then takes. So bishop takes looks like the most obvious move on the board. But then bishop b5, make sure those, well, you have to take on c4 with the bishop, and then bishop b5, and those bishops come off the board. Then black will play rook b3. It'll be annoying for white, but it's not quite game over time. Anyway, why he's short of time. Why doesn't he take back? You're not going to take back with the queen and allow bishop b5. So that's all a bit strange that he's not using the opportunity to play at least one forced move and see how it goes from here. Okay, we have had a bit of action and lots of exchanges in the Lee game against Chakrabarti, and I can't say this is coming out well for Chakrabarti. So after queen check, knight d2, he did play c3. Queen takes. Does he swap? Yep, takes. Bishop takes c5. And now knight d4. Just to make it difficult for black to develop. Well, a4 is not very good because you can get to a main line where you haven't had to play a6. So black should just have developed. c5 wasn't necessary. Okay, here black played a move I really, really don't like. And that is taking on d4. I know it's hard to develop at the moment, but even knight d5, I would have thought was a better way of playing this, threatening knight c6, because I really don't care about that isolated pawn if I can get rid of that bishop and develop my bishop on c8. It's a question of priorities, and that one is not a major one. So I'm completely happy to play knight d5, and at least I got a little threat too. Only a little one, but it's not a disaster. Instead, he took here. And this pawn structure may not look that scary, but unless he's got a tactic here, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. The bishop can go here if it wants. White can put a king here or castle. One rook here, one rook here. It's like a bad Grunfeld defense. in one of these bishop g5 Grunfeld lines. And okay, it's around here, I think, that Chakrabarty's keenness to do something is probably going to be quite valuable, because if the longer you sit here, the longer you're going to suffer. So if you could play e5 here or something before white has a chance to go bishop a3 and castles and put the rooks in the middle, then I reckon it's definitely worth doing. So e5 looks dodgy, of course, after bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, but maybe it's worth it to get opposite colored bishops. I guess we go knight g4, but knight c4, bishop e6 here. So let's play e5. Now, d5 is another question, but I think knight b4 again exploits the fact that white hasn't quite developed yet. Now, maybe we can throw bishop a3 in, and then there's a question about takes, bishop takes, takes. May or may not be okay. Again, a very small material sacrifice, but the critical line is takes, takes, pawn takes, and knight here. So since knight c4, bishop e6 looks fine, I guess to hang on to it, you're going to have to play knight here. And then that long diagonal looks scary. So we could play, for example, c5 and bishop b7, or bishop e6 planning bishop d5. I'm not sure. Probably c5 and bishop b7. Now white can play e4, but I don't know how he can hang on to that pawn. Yeah, there's a big threat, by the way, of h3 here, which I don't want to have to worry about. So I want to be able to answer h3 with bishop b7 and creating some threats. And if you play king up, maybe I go bishop check. It's of course possible to start with rook e8, just to see after bishop here, maybe I can get another tempo and hassle things. But yeah, rook e8 makes sense also because it takes bishop a3 out as an annoying possibility. Now, there's also f6 here, which I absolutely don't believe, but let's give it a try. This is exactly the sort of active play that Ranch may well play. And here it's scary. If you play h3, I think we can take on e3. King up, there is a bishop check. And if you move the knight, I hope we can just take that pawn on f2. I think we probably can. So, as I say, I'm not convinced e5 is sound. I reckon the computer will probably find something wrong with it, but it's almost like almost a necessity to act very, very quickly before your position deteriorates more and more. Yeah, even bishop a3 and knight c4 might be good with knight d6 coming. So this is scary for black. And I'm glad to see that Chakrabarty is using quite a bit of time here. He probably understands that it's close to a critical position. So that one, yeah, what is he? The 8th seed, 6th seed rather, Lee rather is doing quite well against Chakrabarty. Just to return to the top board where it's advantage for black. White is trying to. Now that is a really clever plan. He took with the rook in order to answer bishop b5 with rook here. The point is that when you play rook takes rook, you lose your stable square on c5 for your knight. And so if black is reluctant to take on b4, then the rook on b4 covers the weak b2 pawn, and well, black can feel a bit annoyed about that. Now bishop takes bishop check and queen a2 looks a bit scary, but I'm not sure it's getting anywhere. Is there any other tricky line? Bishop takes bishop and knight a6 just loses a pawn on a4. However, There is a c5 move if we can move that knight in a tricky manner, but I don't think we can. No, I can't see a great square for that knight, because right now that bishop is hanging, so we can't do nothing here. It's quite difficult. Okay, so with the top boards all very much up in the air, Tedrick Lee looking like he might score a bit of an upset against Gary Lane. Oh, nicely done. Yep, definitely looks like he might score an upset against Gary Lane. And Trevor Tao looking like he might take down the leader. I'm going to switch to a little bit of music, and I'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. So let's go for, what haven't we seen yet? We had a request for this, so we'll go with this.
He played Caravan, but from 17, King's side was mine, took my chances fast. My rook was a knife, and my almighty queen, a beast on h6. My bishop was young, his bishop was small. With no town pressure, I crushed him once and for all. I gave up my good night, but I don't mean a thing. He has more experience, but I won't lose again. Oh, my dear Cumberland, wishful eyes to see me. Got nowhere to go. Got nowhere to go. Shook his hand, signed the scores. Lucky as I could. I can't analyze. Can't look in his eyes. Long hair downward. Come to stay. Oh, down, down, and come away. His pieces were dead. I gave up my good night, but I don't feel afraid. He has more experience, but I won't lose again. Oh, my dear Cumberland, where did my dad go? I was clearly waiting 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes selfish. I got it all wrong. After slightly advantage, I had nothing but my dear Kabalenko. You tell me we learn more from our defeats. Who needs victories, right?
He's done a cheat. Okay. So back to the games. And yeah, this is the Gary Lane game. And well, it does look like white is getting through. Though there is a weak f3 pawn. So it's not so clear. Okay, so we left it around here after queen f5. So Gary Lane said go away. And did he go back to the e file? No, he repositioned to e5. Check. Knight here. h3. h5. And now he didn't play king g2, which I thought was a prerequisite. He went c5 immediately. So the question is, why can't we take here? I guess the answer is after queen takes pawn, if you play knight check and we move away, you're losing this guy and possibly that one, possibly before you get to push those pawns. I think that's a really dangerous variation for white to go for, though. And now, knight f7, white will start pushing the a pawn. Maybe black's pawns are a little bit slow. Instead, after c5, he decided he didn't want to go for this. Gary Lane very calmly went rook f7. So now there is a weak, well, potential weak pawns on d6 and b6 that might be hard to defend. And more importantly, you can also just defend the f3 pawn if you want. Yes? So yeah, we could just play king g2. King g2, there's a question if g4 is going to work. It might work, you know. So maybe I want to go to f2, but I'm not sure that's working either. So black really does have g4 as a break, especially if the king is somewhere around here, which allows f3 check. If the king blockades the pawn, we'll move our king and try to play knight takes g4 check, and that could get some significant counterplay. So first thing Tedrick Lee did was swap these guys so that he has those targets on b6 and d6, even if he's not going to go for them immediately. So it's going to be king somewhere, king f2 or king g2, and maybe it's a tough decision. But yeah, right now I would say king f2, though I hate to be on the square that's checkable by the black knight, but it may be necessary. For those who've just come in, by the way, we had a win on board 4 by the 10th seed, Kishigbata Bayaskalan, and she beat Stephen Solomon with, well, a game that looked very, very unclear until one blunder, and then it was all over. So that cost Solomon dearly. Okay, we have one game where poor Min Ren is actually is suffering. Having played so well and scored so few points already, now he's in a position where it's going to be very, very hard to hang on. His b5 pawn is weak. Black has a pair of bishops, and a move like rook b2 might be already close to winning. And there may be better things to do as well. So black is a pawn up, pair of bishops, active pieces, and the South Australian champion, I'm not surprised he's short of time. He's put in his first bad game for the tournament. And as they say in many sports, including soccer, if you don't take your opportunities, your opponent's going to take theirs. And he's had plenty of them in the first 3 rounds, and now his opponent is just outplaying him. So it's just not the right tournament for Alex Min, who, amongst other things, had a forced mate in one game, had queen against rook in the endgame in another game. He should have lots of points, but he doesn't. Okay, back to top board. Great defensive moves by White, and Trevor Tao has decided to call this bluff. So he took here, then he took here. Now queen takes is of course possible, but you're just worse for the rest of the game. So he took with the pawn, and now knight came in here. You've got to be quick here with black, because otherwise your position just isn't that great. But tactically, things could be quite good. Queen here, and now d5. So he doesn't care about the c7 pawn, because he's prepared to go rook c8 and rook c2 check, and that does look a lot of fun for black. Whether is he intending d4? I'm sure he is. So White's king might need to move a bit. There is, of course, a question if you go king f1 whether we can go pawn up anyway and create all sorts of threats down there. They're not game over threats, but they are pretty serious. Yeah, I wouldn't enjoy being White after king here, pawn up, takes, queen check, king across, and maybe just bring the knight in on d2. And that threatens queen f1 check, winning a bishop. It looks really scary. And black's got a pawn less, who cares? So this is tough. Now, if the queen is not under attack, then after d4, you might be able to go e4. And then if pawn takes, you can take with a rook. So that works, but I don't think you've got a good square. For example, if you go queen c2, I think after e4, I can throw d3 check in at you. And if queen takes, I've got a check on c1. If king takes, I've got a rook check and probably a rook check on d2, winning the queen. Maybe that's not quite game over. Maybe I can do better. I'm looking at queen a6 check after king takes. But rook d8 looks... Oh, rook d8, if you go back to here, knight d4 wins. So it's already game over. So that's pretty bad as well. So is Trevor Tao now winning tactically, having won the positional battle? Is there any defense here? You can't really guard e3 particularly well. And Yi's clock is dropping dramatically. So where can you run to? King d1 still allows d4. Now, after d4, maybe you can take with the rook and play the exchange down. For a pawn, it's probably the only try. Not inspiring, but better than getting mated. So I think White will be looking at a way to try to sacrifice the exchange. How can he make it work? Not so easy. King F1 first, D4 rook takes. Maybe that's the go. Yeah, it's probably the best you can do. I have a funny feeling that after we win the exchange, that guy's going to be extremely weak, but maybe that guy's not so relevant. At least White's king's reasonably safe. So it's desperation time. I'd say the computer is going to say this is -3 because they generally don't like desperate. No, what? It's not winning? They're saying King F1, D4, pawn takes. Now they're saying Queen C4 check, which is not what I intended at all. So why isn't this game over? Or very close to it? I guess there's a Queen C1 move, but you're barely hanging on. Queen C1. Amazing. It's not losing. Absolutely amazing. King F1. There was also a queen check on A6 and then Queen E2 that I thought might be really nasty. Computer doesn't think I'm serious because I've done that without sacrificing an extra pawn. Feels good. The bishop on F2 doesn't look great, but they're going to say this is -0.2 or something, yeah? Yeah, B5, 92, Queen C1 again. Incredible. So the computer has found a defense with King F1, which is not the hardest move to find, but King F1 looks so dodgy that, yeah, I'm not sure a human would want to go into those lines. Still, you never know. Yi's been playing extremely well in this tournament, so we'll see if he finds that. And now Lee was standing much better. And indeed, Chakrabarti did find E5. So the only way to try for advantage is to take on C6, but Lee was not prepared to do that. He took, and castled, and this is a much better position than he had before. White's center has been broken up. Even if the queen side goes downhill a little bit, you may well be able to get a 4 against 3 endgame. So the next thing you've got to do is develop your rook on A8. That's the priority. Rook here first. That's to delay things like bishop B2 or bishop A3. So what did they play? Bishop here anyway. And now knight C6. So Black is prepared to accept shocking pawns as long as he can get his bishop out from C8. Now, bishop F6, maybe he's going to start by taking on D2. That makes a bit of sense. So I guess you'd like to move this knight, but after knight C4, bishop E6, it's just a worse version, much worse version for White of a position we had before. So how can White keep the initiative here? Because bishop E6 is coming. If you play rook D1, which is a normal move, I think I'll throw my bishop on G4 just to annoy you first. So not easy at all. In theory, White would love to put a knight on C5. I just don't think it's going to be that effective. There will be some lines where when you take on B7, we might even be able to go rook B8, although I am worried a little bit about long diagonal. But yeah, although white's got the bishops and an obviously good position, it's no longer a stable good position. It's one where white has to calculate and calculate. Knight b3 played. So he does want the knight on c5. So if bishop e6, knight c5 is a pest. So what are we going to play here? Well, bishop g4 looks annoying for white, but it's not game over. And I don't much like bishop d7. So what else do we have? What about bishop e6, knight here, and just bishop d5? Probably not quite working. Take win. Well, take, pawn takes, and then knight takes b7, and there's no pin along the b file at all. And actually e4 is a pest here, which I didn't see. Okay, so bishop e6 is not a good move. Bishop d7 might be a healthier one. We still have a bit of a problem after knight c5, but maybe rook b8 solves that. There's no bishop e5 at the moment. Now, there are lots of ways for white to get a highly advantageous endgame with opposite bishops, but he's not going to be happy with that because the drawing chances are very serious. So right now, yeah, no easy way to stop things, but you do have to get developed. So that bishop is going to have to come out. Both players have not great clocks, 20 minutes each left. I actually think this favors white a bit because black has to do a lot of defensive calculations. White only has to find one good line on each move. But right now, yeah. For example, I don't want to play knight d7. I know it stops knight c5, but again, our problem is going to be getting developed. After a simple move like rook d1, black's going to find it so hard to move anything. So I don't want to go backwards if I can help it. I think bishop d7, knight c5, rook b8, it may be just a normal, sensible way of playing. And as long as you don't lose a pawn around here, then you're okay. I am a bit scared that white will simply put a rook on the d file, and your rook will be tied up defending the d8 rook as well as the b7 pawn. So none of this is really satisfactory. It's all really just hanging on. I'd be interested to see if the computer gives white a big advantage or it finds a defense. That is a big advantage, actually. But interestingly, after bishop f5, it puts a rook on c1. So here, yeah, it's had that sort of stable advantage. But after e3, I'm guessing, it said e5 is simply the right move. After e5 takes, they say you should have played knight g4. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, if you can play knight g4 and take back with the other knight, then you can develop your bishop easily. Then the whole position is really happy for black, or, well, close to equalizing. So possibly knight e5 was a mistake, even though it's the most natural move on the board. Okay, let's go back to see how our tournament leader, Yi Lu, is doing. 45 minutes behind on the clock. He did play king f1. Now that is impressive. He doesn't think d4 is winning. Or else he just can't find another good move. So just a reminder that the computer thinks that black should play d4, pawn takes pawn, queen c4 check as a queen sack, which is not going to happen, I think. The point is you win the b2 pawn later, but I would expect black can get the pieces back somehow to cover that pawn. Might be a little bit tricky, but it's an unlikely choice by Trevor Tao. On board 3, the game we thought was going to be super exciting has turned into an ending. Admittedly, a super exciting ending. So king f2 was played, and he immediately went for g4. Take, and f3. So all black has to do now is unpin and take on g4, and he could have serious prospects. So he's making sure that white doesn't have time to take these guys, the newly created weaknesses. So he's quite confident that if g5, he can just play king up. And actually, this could be really tough for white to play. Queen d4 makes a bit of sense. But after king g6, even if you go queen check, we're going king up and trying to play knight takes pawn check. So the other thing about queen d4 is I was wondering about rook f4, but actually that pawn ending is losing, not winning for white. Sorry, for black. So can I look at board 7? Certainly. That is Johansson, is it? No, Testerlin, yeah? Okay. Board 15. Wow. That is impressive. Yeah. Yeah. So is this where the position is supposed to be, or have someone thrown the pieces onto the board? Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. How did they get total craziness? Okay, bishop b5. This is a Spassky idea, I believe. Although after knight d4, Ben Leong doesn't play the tricky bishop c4. He plays knight f3. And after a6, he goes back here. And he's had a number of games with this line. So I presume Satyarth has prepared something. That something appears to be d5, queen check. So if bishop d7, I suppose queen d4 is the idea. Looks weird, but I guess it's possible. So queen d7. So here bishop b5 is a move. Oh, no, it isn't. You can take with the queen. So queen d4 anyway. And now instead of worrying about that rook, you can't play knight f6 because of e5, e6, but you could consider f6, but he just wanted to play takes. So he's going to be a whole rook down, but castles take rook here. Pawn up. Well, if those two pawns can survive, then I think Narahara Sethi has got a great position. But if white can get a very quick d4 and bishop to h6, then white should be doing rather well. So first question is, what happens if d4? My guess is that black is just going to develop. Because who needs a bishop on f8 that wasn't doing anything? And now, I don't know, bishop b5 maybe, or something to enable us to take on d4 and play rook d1. So I suppose that something is bishop a4. Oh, there's a few discovered checks here, aren't there? Oh, then I've got rook back again. So let's take rook here, threatening. Rook takes a1 and pawn equals queen. But you do have a bishop here. So I guess I've sacrificed a little bit too much. Something like bishop to h6 and then bishop to e3. That's probably working okay. All right, so the crazy line doesn't work. So what's wrong with d4? Anything? Minus 0.3. Of course it is. Yeah. Bishop b5, f3, all the most unnatural moves on the board. So I presume after b5, bishop h6, we're going to do what? All right, they're saying, okay, b5 is the best move. Really, bishop h6. Bishop b7, of course it is. Queen takes check, run away, queen here, queen g4, and apparently you've got a big attack. Could be true. And their main line is completely crazy. Instead of rook takes e2, play like a computer. They're going to play some quiet move like bishop h5 here or something. f6, well, that's quiet enough for me. f6 and g5. Oh, okay, this is only to be played with preparation. But so queen takes h7, much more natural. So he's brought his queen back and he's getting his bishop to d3. So that's about as good as you can get. You're only the exchange down. So you would normally say this was close to winning for black. I don't know if the computer agrees, but once, yeah, absolutely. So he's hung on to both pawns, which is unbelievable in itself. He's finally got his queen back. And b3 played. Queen d5. Queen h3 is not the first move I thought of. Is there anything wrong with rook takes e2 here? Yes, rook takes e5. Bit of bad luck. Queen here. You can't take on e5 with the queen because you lose your bishop. If you take with the rook, he wants to go queen c8 check, I guess, and maybe then rook takes... No, he can't do that. I was thinking he could play rook takes c2, but that one pawn left on e3, I think, is too strong. Sorry, e2. So yeah, rook takes e5. Slice it off down to just 4 minutes. But okay, let's play rook takes e5. See if there is any problem here. Oh, hang on, you could play queen takes queen and then take back with the rook, couldn't you? So queen d1 is not possible. So what about queen here? That feels like game over if rook takes pawn queen e1. And if queen defends on c1, I think I'll take the pawn on a2, though I don't have to. If queen b1, I'm pretty sure this is even worse. And now, presumably, black just has to advance the pawns. Notice that you've got this position without any material sacrifice at all. So, so queen h3, but he didn't take back. He went f5. They say g4 is even better. I don't get it. I don't get anything here. So f5, queen h5, queen e5, queen g5. They must have a way to get through here for black, because otherwise you've just given white a passed h-pawn that they can start pushing. So even though one bishop ties up 2 rooks, that's not forever. So was there something really clear here? Instead of e5, which looked a bit funny. They say just rook takes d4. Now, why? I don't get it. This is not normal chess. This is just a computer choosing random moves and then random numbers next to them. So, yeah, so it's really still totally okay for black, but Ben Leong is managed to create some bits of chaos. Okay, now that we're down at the bottom of the tournament, we've only really looked at Min Ren's game, and he was dead. Is he still dead? Yep, if you play count the pieces, one move later, it's going to be game over. So that is it. Min Ren loses. That's the game we were looking at just now. And here, Ethan Chang up against the Tasmanian champion, and it looks like Will Rumley is about to score his first point because he has an extra pawn and control over the position. So that looks pretty good. Heather Richards has, again, good control and the exchange up. So she should win this as well. Barman Kargosha has upset Jessie Zafirakis, and that was quick. How did we get it? So we have a Queen's Gambit accepted with e4. Dangerous line, as played by Alexei Shirov. Okay, so 94 already is a bit annoying because black can't castle queenside. So are we prepared to take that knight on c5? It doesn't look great, but what else are you doing? And still can't castle queenside. So white's played this pretty well. Wow. I guess it's one of those positions where if you play g6, we just take it and your king's in all sorts of bother. And that looks pretty good. Pawn takes queen check and knight f4. And if you move your knight, queen a4, game over. So, yeah, lots and lots of knight moves by white. That knight on c3 went to e4, c5, back to e4, back to c3, and took on d5. And all the while it was doing something, and ultimately things worked out very, very well. So Kargosha has scored the first upset of the round. The New South Wales veteran, he's, how old is he nowadays? 47. Yeah, and up against one of the Australia's more successful juniors. Yeah, Jessie Zafirakis. He may not have played so well in recently, but earlier this year he won a strong round robin tournament in Melbourne with a 7 out of 7 score, and everyone thought he was really taking off, but his Oceania Junior result was a little bit disappointing. So we haven't seen Daniel Wang and Jack Rogers for a while, but it does look like it's going to be a draw unless Black's king charges in and does something really damaging. So what was the last move? Why wouldn't he just play king takes pawn? Strange. Although king e5, maybe I check on b5. And if king f4, I go rook f5 and take the f6 pawn, which I value a bit more than the h7 one. So that might be it, but should be a draw, as I say. And neighbouring board, Daniel Wang's mum, Zheng Jilin, up against Sterling Backer, a really tough position to judge. How strong or weak are those hanging pawns in the centre? Has white got a chance to go bishop g5, bishop f6 and set up some sort of mating net? Really hard to say. I think black's absolutely fine here, in which case if black can get the white squared bishops off the board, then the bishop on d2 might find itself not so useful. Might find itself defending the e5 pawn. And I'm not at all sure that white even wants to play f4 in such a position. I know actually c4 might win, bishop e3, bishop c5. So you can't play f4. But you can if black starts with bishop g7. So tricky position, both players short of time. Again, probably about equal, but and anything can happen position. Here, David Cannon, the international master, is a pawn up, but his opponent should be able to draw this 5 against 4, but it's seriously tough. Daryl Johansson getting into time trouble against John Rusakov. He did not play the recommended rook c8 and d5. He did it this way, so he wants a5, a4. And he's going to get it. No, not quite. That is a horrible looking move, rook g3. What sort of a move is that? I mean, I'm not going to take your h pawn because it's clear you want me to, but I'll take it later when you're not looking. I think his plan is g5, g6 because the bishop on b3 pins the f pawn. But if that's what you're worried about, oh, he can't play g5 because queen d7 wins a piece, attacking the rook on h3 and the knight on a4. So in order to get his attack going, he feels that he has to move that rook, and he wants to move it on the third rank anyway. And suddenly Johansson goes d5 because his queen is looking at that rook on g3 and thinking, maybe I can get it soon. So let's see. If you take with the pawn and we take with the knight, bishop takes, we can take on a4. That looks pretty good. If you start with something like bishop b6, then we'll just take everything on d5 probably. Oh, yeah, perhaps. So yeah, Johansson he did use a lot of time, but he has taken this tactical opportunity that Rusakov has presented him with. I mean, if you're going to play such an unhealthy move as rook g3, you've got to at least check that you're not getting blown away in some way. Aidan Odenthal, by the way, has gone down to Harvey Zhu very quickly. And I think that's because, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong game. That is going to be a draw. That's Johansson. So where am I? Here. So we left that King's Indian after bishop g5, after rook b1, queen f7, b4. And now he rerouted the knight to b8. I was suggesting he should have gone by a c5 earlier and breaks everything up. Now, of course, white can play a3, but little things are adding up for black here. The open a file is going to be useful, and the knight is coming to f6. And then, as I mentioned before, h5, and this is almost winning already. f4 was played, but that's absolute desperation. You don't want to play g4. It leaves holes everywhere, and probably knight g3 wins. So what was this queen b1? Knight f6, knight h5 is what you have to deal with. Knight d1, knight h5. Yeah, well, personally, I think I might take that. But no, if you take it, there'll be h4 later. So you can't kill this attack. He tried it this way, but all the pins aren't going to help you. There's rook f1, bishop g3 check, rook f3, bishop g, maybe not bishop g3 check. What happens after rook f3? Queen g7 does something, but you have to play it, don't you? Rook f3, yeah. Anything else is going to be dead. Okay, he's not made it immediately, but yeah, you just can't survive this. And he resigned. So extraordinarily bad play by Aidan Odenthal, just wasting time on the queen side when he should have been dealing with their king side problems. And by the time they arrived, he couldn't do anything about them. So Harvey Zhu has bounced back from that loss, that bad loss to Yi Lu yesterday, to get to 3 out of 4. So he is equal clubhouse leader. If we go to Gary Lane, that should be a draw, but is Gary Lane going to swindle something? Doesn't look it. So here, well, actually, so how did we get here? He went queen c8. So check. That is nowhere near as good as taking on g4, I have to say. King back, f2. So queen d8, stopping rook e7 and rook here. And now that king is perfectly placed compared to the knight. It takes 3 moves for the knight just to check the king. And the alternative is to get your rook somewhere e3 or g3. G3, yeah, but e3 is going to be vulnerable to checks. He played rook f3, so there's a check here. The king went back, and now queen takes. And he's living on the edge, Tedrick Lee, but he may be taking down international master Gary Lane. You would love to play rook e3, but there is a check here, followed by a check here, and then queen takes rook. So you don't seem to have a way to get through. Maybe rook h3 is possible. Maybe that's only a draw. We can then give 2 checks and play king g2 though, can't we? Because if we go rook f3, I can afford queen takes. And rook e3 loses the rook in the same way as before. So I think Tedrick Lee is winning, despite black making lots of progress here. He's managed to get a passed pawn on the d file, which means that black can never sit tight. And if I put this on a computer, yep, they don't see a defense at all. So this is all a bit sad for Gary Lane. If for those of you who weren't here, he was the one who started the fun in this game by playing knight takes e4, giving up his queen for 2 pieces. He was a little bit unlucky because if you have a look at Tedrick Lee's clock, he's got 4 minutes more than he started with here. And even here, he's still got 4 minutes more, nearly 5. So in other words, he knew exactly how to play this queen sacrifice line. He gives back the exchange. And it's a solid enough position for black, but all the winning chances are with white. And Lane is about to go down. So that's on board 3. That will leave 15-year-old Tedrick Lee on 3.5 out of 4. So, that's right. He started thinking on move 21. Pretty astonishing, eh? Well, I mean, if I had to bet, I would say, and I also have a memory of a game like this. Let's see. What's up? Which player? Did he? Oh, okay. Let's have a look. Okay, first of all, I just want to check here. Let's get to move 17, say. Are there other games with this position? 2 of them. Okay, black won one and white won the other. And the really weird thing about those 2 games is that the lower rated player won both of them. So it's a line where I guess you have to adjust. So we have 2 2,500 players playing this and white won, and 2 23-ish hundred players and black won. So lane's queen sacrifice. Let's see. F5, was that played in either of them? It was played in 2 of them. F4, not played it at all. Now this is impressive. So this is Tedrick Lee not only knowing 17 moves of theory in a line that his opponent was Gary Lane really ever going to, could he predict Gary Lane was going to play this, but preparing a new move that turned out really, really well in F4. So that's awesome preparation. To not only know the line, but to have an improvement, that's great. Now let's check out if what's the code on this one? It's E92. So someone reckons in the Oceania Junior, there was a game like that in the last round. Jaden Oy. Oh my goodness, the same sacrifice. So it was Gary Lane who knew it was, hang on. Yeah, Gary Lane knew it was coming. And he's playing the same way. Yeah, well, the Oceania games aren't in many of the databases. Oh, okay, so he played F4 a couple of moves later. But he gets almost the same position. No wonder he's playing fast. F4, rook E1. Okay, rook E5. And he opened up lines. And I'd say Jaden is pretty badly off now. In fact, yeah, it's already hopeless. That's one. I don't believe it. Do we have 2 of them? No, because in this game, Anna Peretti played a different system, but Tedrick Lee still won. So this is quite remarkable how successful Tedrick Lee is with this D5 system, which is totally out of fashion. I do remember actually the first time I played the World Cadet Championship in France, there was a player called David Goodman from England who came over prepared with this D5 line. He won 3 critical games with it and won the World Cadet Championship, even though he was far from the favourite. So it does have a pedigree of winning junior events anyway. But this is the Australian Championship. So, well, Tedrick Lee hasn't won yet, but I'm pretty sure he is going to. And I am most impressed. So thank you for that tip about Oceania, because he actually had 2 games in that line. So Tedrick Lee's now nearly an hour up on the clock. They must be past move 40, I guess. Back to live mode. Queen D6. Yeah, they're past move 40, and I'd say Gary Lane. Yeah, once your knight's on D3, it's going to get really tricky because the knight can't help. It's only the rook that can check. All right, let's go back up where Lee Tri Kien is down to only 3 minutes, but he has a lot more pawns than Ranj Chakrabarti. So how did this happen? Knight B3, rook here, knight here anyway. Take, take. And now instead of some rook B1 move, he goes for that pawn. And he wants to play knight D6. So, oh, he's threatening the rook as well, sorry. So he takes, and he's won a pawn. And black still hasn't quite got developed. Now he has, but he is in a totally depressing rook ending. So how do we go about winning this with white? I think you would love a pair of rooks off, but that may be not so easy. A5 is interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. you have to play b5 and a6. So there is a passive rook sitting on a8 now. So I don't think we can afford something like rook e8 to take on e3 or anything like that. So rook here, takes. Not quite what I was hoping for with white, but we are threatening to double on the 7th. So yeah, rook f6 first. Now if we double on the 7th, black will simply push the pawn. So white probably should go rook a5, get black to play a6, although there's no great threat. He is doing that. So what about a5? Then he's going rook a7. But this is still not so clear. Chakrabarti is fighting hard. If a5, rook a7. Oh, but we can't go rook a6 because of rook f7 check. So we cannot keep our rook behind the pawn, and that, yeah, is getting easier and easier. So doubles rooks, and Lee looks like he is going to go to 3.5 points as well as Tedrick Lee. So yeah, the only hope for black is to get a single rook ending with the a pawn moving, and that can often be a draw. But he's not going to get his rook behind the pawn. He's going to have his rook side onto the pawn, and even the passed a pawn is not going to save him. So technically, this looks like it's game over. Even a6 is better. A6 is definitely a better move, but this position. Around here. Right, you're saying rook f2 could be annoying. Yep, it definitely could be. So Solomon's okay. So what about a5 then? If we're giving up a pawn, why not do it? And now rook b8, yeah. But I reckon I can go rook here. Okay, this is a bit messy. Oh, sure. But is this easy or not so easy? I'm not quite sure. Black king is a bit of a disaster. That looks easy. Play what king? Yeah, it's true. Stephen Solomon was saying, why bother with rook a7? Because you could play f4. I presume rook e6 is nothing, and then king f3, or even perhaps g4, king g3, then f4 later. And the e pawn might be a fraction weak, but what about rook here? Oh, f7's hanging, so no, it's not possible at all. So okay, so yeah, you can just delay things, fix up your pawn structure, fix up your king, and then take stuff. Oh, is this back to live moves? So this is what's happened. Rook d8, f4 straight off. And that looks pretty good. So I guess we have to play rook d3. But king f3, rook e6 might be a bit tricky, whereas e4 looks completely winning. Oh, unless there's rook a... Oh, no. I'm a bit worried my king might get mated, but I can probably take some pawns before I have to worry about it. Rook a6, I'll take on f7 and take on a7. And that'll do the job. And if you go rook g6, I'll take on f7 and play g4. And next move is e5 anyway. And then you'll have to keep an eye on e6. So that looks completely winning. So f4 by Lee, who doesn't have a lot of time to think. But yeah, technically this is a winning ending. Maybe we should throw a6 in here just to make it a little bit harder for white to take all the pawns. That might be sensible, but it is Well, let's see. It should be completely winning for white. Only +3, but I still reckon it's close to game over. You don't say +3 if it's going to be a 3 against 2 on the king side or anything like that. So, okay, for a moment I thought Yilu was surviving, but now he doesn't have perpetual checks. He does have perpetual checks. What's going on here? Okay, where did we leave it? With d4 coming. But instead he went this queen a6 check that we looked at and queen e2. Makes sense. So he hasn't given up a pawn in order to get this. Queen c6, rook takes here. So if bishop takes, we go a check here. We get that guy with check, we come back for that guy, and then we take that guy. So did he check first before he went? No, he took on d5 immediately. And now knight d2 by Trevor Tao, who has started using, no, he hasn't started using a bit of time. This is amazing calculation if it works. So if queen takes here, you have a check to take that guy, but we will have a perpetual down here. However, I think he's got more trickiness in mind. I think after queen check, king here, he wants to take that guy. So if pawn takes, queen takes, check is winning, and you don't have a safe square. If king here, we'll take that and then that. Well, actually, we'll go that way because we don't want to allow you to take there. And if king h3, oh no, the same sort of trick. So you don't have a move. So this is beautifully calculated by Trevor Tao. So is there a way out? Remembering, of course, bishop takes, check, 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 take, and he hasn't even taken that guy yet. So how much time left? 10 minutes. Has he got one move that sets up a perpetual? Queen f7, same trick with knight f3. I think. Okay, let's try queen f7. Is this a better way to do it? No, unfortunately not. Knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, king takes, and a couple of different mates, but I like that one. So that's pretty bad. So yeah, Trevor Tao, I think, is winning. This might be one to check if the computer is finding something magical, but it's highly unlikely. So minus 3.6, that'll do me. Rook d4, they say. And they say, again, you should go queen check and take on f3. So rook d4 is trying to force black to do something immediately, but it's absolutely hopeless. That is not a serious recommendation. So Yilu is going to go down and our leader is going to drop to 3 points, and we will have a whole series of leaders, including Tedrick Lee, I believe. Okay, what happened here? Queen d6, he went king g7 again. Check and king h6. I'm not sure why that check happened, but I'd really love to play that and win a rook somehow. I'm not completely sure I can do it. Queen here, check, knight in the way. And pawn up, I think knight f4 is a bit annoying. Because I haven't got time for queen takes and pawn up. I might have time for queen d1, but I'm far from sure about that. And queen e4 maybe?
G7.
Where?
Pawn G7.
Pawn g7. I'll say it with check. Yeah. And after queen, king moves. It's okay. This is unnecessarily tricky. It may be a forced win, but I don't want to play it unless it's a forced win that I can calculate. So, but these guys, yeah, they feel a bit unstable right now. So what do you play? Hasn't moved yet. So he hasn't seen a way to win those pieces yet, but he's got to be very, very close. So if queen e2, then rook h3 is a real problem. So rook h3 is probably the threat. There is rook g3, but there's queen d6 check, although that would be, oh no, there's queen h4 as well. So let's say I just say, okay, d6. So rook here you can't do because I take it. Rook here you can't do because of queen h4, so you have to go here. And then I need some tricky checks. Let's start with g5. So if king up, my plan is to go queen check, take the rook and play d7. And that should be winning. If king here, queen e6 wins the rook. So we win the rook. So d6 is winning. Yeah, so this is game over for white if he plays it correctly. This, by the way, is the finish to Stephen Solomon's game. He played rook e8 instead of queen a8. And after knight e5, there was absolutely no defense to f7. And in fact, after queen takes pawn check, Biascalan was able to play queen takes e6 as well, a stylish finish, and knight f7 follows. So that was the first game to finish today. Still no move from Yi? Yes, he has moved. Okay, he played queen c5. So let's see, check, check. Can't possibly work, but so queen here. So check here. You can't take there because of queen check and queen here. So knight check, king g3, forced. So I would have thought knight takes rook and queen takes pawn check is going to win, because knight takes rook protects that pawn and prevents all the perpetuals. But he hasn't played it yet. And if knight takes king takes, we have that with check. So why is knight takes h4 check not completely winning? What's that, sorry? He played knight takes check. And that is game over, and I think Yi will resign here because of queen takes pawn check and queen g4. So, I mean, he can try running his king to the middle, but it's absolutely hopeless. So, yeah, well, let's say he tries queen takes. F4 you take with the queen. So queen takes check. King F4. Queen here. King E5. I'd love knight F3, but I could also just take H5 if I really wanted. And maybe F4 is not bad either. Okay, he'll play this on, I guess. Yep, that's what they've got, isn't it? So there is a queen G5. Does it? What about king E5 F4 check? Bit of a problem. So our leader is taken down. Trevor Tao gets revenge for the previous Australian Championship where Yi ruined his tournament. Now it's Trevor Tao's chance to defeat Yi, and that was an impressive positional game, and then the tactics afterwards were a lot of fun. Queen G5 played, 1-0 will go up on the board. So we've really got Ranj Chakrabarty's difficult rook ending against Le Triquien. And okay, he's playing sensibly, but those two extra pawns really are too much. So white can just play king F3 and move the rook away. Yeah, king F3, G4, takes, G5. That rook on F6 is going to get into all sorts of bother. It should be easily winning. So that one is game over. And Tedrick Lee has not found a forced win yet, but there is one. We already have had wins by Bias-Garland and Harvey Zhu. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of players at or near the top. Remembering the top score is going to be 3.5 now, and there will be 1, 2, 3 players on 3.5, and then a pack of 1, 2, 3 players on 3. So all decisive results on the top board so far. Quite remarkable. However, yeah, I'll go a little further down. You've got a draw between Ryder Testolin and Sukai G. It may not believe it, but that's a very good result for the 4th seed Sukai G, because Ryder Testolin is his Angstgegner, the player against whom he really can't play. And this will be, let's see, it'll be the second game out of 4 that he's managed to draw with white against Testolin. So, and overall they've played about 7 times. So, yeah, Sukai G not having a great tournament. Remembering, of course, though, that he turned up late for the first round, took a very, very quick draw against a much lower rated player because he was feeling sick, and just went home and recovered, and he managed to get better. But he's only on 2 out of 4 now. The other player who was sick and missed the first 2 rounds is Heather Richards. She looks like she's going to get to 2 out of 4 as well. She lost the first 2 games were 0-point forfeits, but she won yesterday, and now she's taking on Melbourne's Leo Kalina. So the Australian top player from Bundaberg is certainly, Gladstone actually, is doing rather well. She's the exchange up for a pawn, but everything's under control. It's just that somehow she hasn't made much progress recently. She hasn't won the H5 pawn, and if she does go king H4, then knight G6 is very annoying. So, and she doesn't want to move her knight from E3 because of knight F5 check. So, yeah, she is struggling a little bit to make progress. Tristan Stevens moved to Canada a few years ago. So Tristan Stevens was the other good Gladstone player. Okay, Ted Power has beaten the unlucky Alex Min. The South Australian champion should have had 2 out of 2. Now he's got a half out of 4, and just completely outplayed by the 15-year-old from St George, who was quite fortunate to get into the tournament. It needed a special decision by the Australian Chess Federation to let him in, but he's certainly justifying that decision. Okay, the crazy game we were looking at between Ben Leong. Oh my goodness. What? Okay, those pawns were on F2, G2, and H2 last time we looked at it. Okay, let's just go back a little. This is not your average opening. And he has hung on to those 2 pawns for the rest of the game. Unfortunately, his 4 pawns on the king side have all disappeared. So how did that happen? Let's have a look. Hang on a tick. Just had a, computer malfunction. A bad one. But I think it's dry now. Okay, so let's just go through this game. It's completely crazy. And now it says it's better. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. So we don't really need a computer to tell us that it's crazy. Okay, I can understand that bishop check. There you go. But he could have gone bishop h6 before. And black is completely winning, by the way. But yeah, this f5 is really unnecessary. He could have just played rook takes on e5, and black is winning. Now he's losing his g5 pawn, and it's winning, but it's trickier. Probably that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, rook e4, maybe rook g4, that sort of thing. Queen e4 doesn't do too much, and here black's actually a bit tied up, preventing white from sacrificing back. So f3, and all of a sudden there's a threat of rook c2. And he's managed to lose all 3 of them and not get through. And suddenly Bentley, I suspect this is now winning for white. 0.6. Who knows why? But okay, let me say, even if it is 0.6, the gradient of the game is entirely in white's favor. So from completely lost to lost but difficult to I've got 3 passed pawns. I'm just going to, and now, yeah, to swap queens is like resigning. And I think poor old Saisidarth Narahara Seti is going to give that one up. So Ben Leong, sheer grit and determination to survive. And yeah, you could easily have decided that you were going to die with those 2 pawns. But he basically put 1 rook on c1 and 1 rook on e1, and he decided to make 20 queen moves in a row. And it sort of worked. So... Okay, so let's go. I just want to do a quick count. So move 1 with the queen, move 2, move 3, move 4, move 5, 6, 7, swaps off the only other piece that's not the queen, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then he swapped the queens off. So yeah, 1 queen did a lot of damage. And it's actually good strategy. If you can't move any of your other pieces, well, move the one you can. And so that's all he did. So Trevor Tao has won. We knew that, but we didn't know that Lee had also won. Let's have a look here. As expected, G4, G5, and now, yeah, if you go Rook F5, you're going to get caught there with King F3 and King G4. But it's all a bit slow. And a very nice finish. If you take, it's back rank mate. If you don't take, you're dead. So that was game over. So we have only Gary Lane fighting on, but we think he's completely lost against Tedrick Lee. But this was, hang on. Check E6, you mean? Okay, if King F4? Okay. So Queen E, no, you haven't got. So how do you do it now? So Queen H7. If King G4? Actually, I can go Queen, hang on. Okay, Queen H7. This is a sort of position where you wouldn't be surprised if Gary Lane pulled off a swindle. So Queen, yeah, I was thinking Queen E4 check. But I'm not completely sure after King here. Oh, yes, I am. Queen takes Rook. Rook C3, I take the knight, I think. I hope that's winning. Rook C3. I don't have a big choice, do I? I am in a check-free zone. Oh, not totally check-free zone. We do have Queen F4, but I'm worried about takes, Rook C2. And maybe some sort of blockade position. If you don't lose your rook immediately. And Gary Lane's been very good at not losing his rook immediately in this game. So King H4. Back to live mode, but Queen H7 was played. So if King G3, you don't actually have a threat. So we could just go D6 or something. So King G4 does have a threat. So Queen G6 was another suggestion. And then if King H4, we can go Queen E4 and take the knight. So you can't go, and if you go to F4, then we go Queen F6 and Queen E6 next and take the knight. And if you go H3, we go Queen E6 and take the knight. So finally he's got there. So a great result by Tedrick Lee. It took a bit of work. But the King G3. Yeah. And let's just see. John Papantonio was doing a great job against George C. And he's now got an ending, hang on, which is drawn. Because we are threatening bishop C2. And if you go rook A8, we'll go bishop E4. And if you go rook A6, we'll go bishop D3. Sorry, you can't go rook A6. If you go after rook A8, rook A6, we'll just go bishop D3 again. Or will we? Or is bishop b7 winning? No, it's not because of rook b6. So George C has swindled a draw, which is a surprisingly good result for the third seed because his position was pretty horrible for the whole game. Rook a7. Okay, this is also a draw. Bishop b5, rook takes rook, bishop c6, 5 against 4. But George will play this forever. 5 against... rook takes pawn check. Okay, so who's playing for a win? Hard to guess. Yeah, I guess so. But it definitely should be a draw. So that is a nice try, actually, rook a7. And maybe black should not do anything. Just sit tight. e4, e5 is not a threat. So what we're saying here is if bishop c2 to win the piece, we go rook f7 check and then bishop takes c2 and try to win that ending. It will be a draw, but it's worth a try. Oh, sorry. Just moved on to Johansson's game where he's losing. Wow. Young New South Wales Junior. We left it after d5, which looked fantastic. And he didn't take on a4 here. Because if queen takes, rook d8, fair enough. But now we have a roughly equal ending, I guess. Johansson's trying to win. Oh no. And he's just blundered a piece. Unbelievable. Hang on. Can I take on c2 now? If I take on c2, king takes. Bishop a3 is clever, but so pawn takes c2, king c2, bishop takes f3, rook f3, rook, I don't know, h1 or something. Really good drawing chances. Instead, he did it this way, and he went, instead of winning a piece, he went the exchange down, because with a passed pawn, you should be winning. So, black is about to start pushing the h-pawn. Will it work? You never know. I would suggest rook, I know. Well, rook h2 does slow things down, but we can eliminate that pawn. So Johansson's got some drawing chances here for sure. Did George C decide to take the material? No, he just sat tight. And now rook a8 is good. Hang on. What's bishop e2 in aid of? So rook a8 keeps the extra pawn now. Ah, bishop b5. Okay. Okay, so he is keeping everything shipshape. So still likely draw. Still no result from Tedrick Lee. Has he taken a knight yet? He has not taken a knight yet. King g4, queen e6 check, surely. Queen takes. There is no chance. He'll hang on to the f-pawn for as long as he can, but it is game over. I don't think Lane will play on there. So what else have we got? Sterling Baaka beat Zhang Jilin, the 9th seed, up against the woman grandmaster, both from Sydney. And where did we leave it? We left it in this complicated position, and as expected, light squared bishops came off. And I don't know about taking on a4 because that looks positionally bankrupt to allow those pawns to become passed pawns. And an accident is happening, I'd say. And resigns because there's queen e1 check and then queen e3 check, winning the rook on c5. So once white took on a4, it's just a matter of getting it right here. Now, if you can't take on d5 because of rook d8, then your position really is a bit sad. Oh, rook d4, that'll do too. Yep. Yes, okay. Rook d4 is winning, yep. So what can white possibly do? You've only got a moment or two before those pawns start getting serious. So I must admit, white never did manage to play bishop g5, bishop f6, which I was expecting was going to happen sometime. No, there's no trick. And black's pawns are just too strong. So Sterling Baaka is finally back to a decent score, having lost his first game in the only big upset of the first round. So he's up to 2.5 now. Zhang Jilin only 1.5. Gary Lane has resigned after queen takes e2, I think. Yep. So that's over. And really, yeah, we're going to get a long endgame here. Hang on. He did play rook a8, forgetting about bishop b5. Really? Oh, you mean other than just agree a draw? Well, oh, bishop d1 is coming, right? Okay, so he gets this endgame, puts the bishop on f3. Should be a very easy draw, but you never know in these endings. There is another decent plan here for white, and that would be to play f4, just to make sure that any pawn move swaps off lots of pawns, and then king f3. The only danger is if the black king eventually turns up on d2, but it's very, very difficult to wander that far. So, yeah, it's look, nine times out of 10, this should be a draw, but you do have a strong player against a weaker one, and one who probably is a little bit annoyed at getting into this ending, having been better the whole game. So he had some position like this. He didn't play bishop takes pawn here, for example. Much better version of what he got in the game. Of course, black should be able to draw, but it won't be a lot of fun. Instead, he's worse, and as I've said before, the gradient of the game is against him, so quite possibly he's going to go down here. This is Johansson, and his h-pawn has started running. I don't know how you go past h3, because you won't have bishop you probably won't have bishop g2, or maybe you'll have bishop d6 and then play bishop g2. So b6, h4, b7 is impossible. Okay, that's nice. Rook h2. Maybe we can Yeah, but maybe we can play king f6. Oh no, then the h-pawn's hanging. So b6 is the right move here for sure. h4, rook h2, and I'm not sure what black does next. Really not sure. Unless it's worth playing g5 and taking back with the king and charging the king up the board as well. That's not impossible, I must admit. So probably Johansson has enough to draw here. Computer says rook h2 straight away. g6 takes, bishop f2. Yeah, okay, they think white is definitely better. But there are a lot of positions that computer can be a rook up and not underestimate how good the last black pawn is. So I wouldn't write Johansson off. Terence Tang and David Cannon, we left that ages ago. And it's still 1 pawn up and a probable draw. So with all the top games finished, I might leave it there for today. But Trevor Tao has taken down the leader, Yi Lu, and he is now co-leader with Li Tri Kien, the Melbourne student, and the big surprise packet of this tournament, Tedrick Lee, 15-year-old from Melbourne, who beat international master Gary Lane in this round. 3 people are on 3, including Yi Lu, but yeah, the field is bunching up a bit, and we're not going to have a runaway winner the way we did in 2 years earlier with Rishi Sardana. So the next round tomorrow, it will be at 2 o'clock. The commentary will start at 2:30. Thanks everyone for coming along, and yeah, see you all tomorrow. Yes. I did it first, then I realized it wasn't my
Step of weakness is a talkie. Dark night has blocked my way, and I can't go back.